All right, everybody. In the interest of time, I know there's going to be a ton of people filing in here in the next minute or so, but I do want to be cognizant of everyone's time, including our very special guests this month. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome to the September Recovery Month edition of our DuPage ROSC presentation series. As always, my name is Jared. I am the coordinator for the DuPage ROSC. Glad you could all make it with us here today for Recovery Month. Before we get started, I just want to take care of just a few housekeeping things, talk a little bit about what ROSC is for people who might be new, and then some events that are coming up, and then we will get to our special guest, Tom Farley. So I'm going to share the screen briefly. All right. So for people who don't know what the ROSC is, we're a coordinated network of community-based services and supports along the continuum that are person-centered and build on the strengths and resilience of individuals, families, and communities to achieve abstinence, improved health, wellness, and quality of life for those with or at risk of substance use and mental health disorders. We collaborate to try to build and empower our community of recovery here in DuPage, helping people of all ages to overcome challenges and achieve the goals through personalized behavioral health and overall wellness. We developed the Sustainable ROSC Council, which is what most of you are a part of, comprised of persons with lived experience, so people in recovery, but also their allies, family, friends, and community members to really help cut down on that stigma that's associated with substance use and co-occurring disorders. Overall goal, we're building a community of recovery in DuPage, and as we move into year 3, we appreciate everybody who has taken part and what we've been able to build over the past couple of years, and we're very excited about what we'll be able to build moving into the future. Just a couple of things. So next month, the next DuPage ROSC Council meeting, which is always on the second Wednesday of every month, we are going to be welcoming our friends from Banyan Treatment Centers as well as the Way Back In. So we'll be talking about options for residential treatment as well as sober living. You can always join that the second Wednesday of every month. We do a hybrid in person at Serenity House, but also on Zoom. So join us for that one. Tonight at 7 p.m., if you're a peer support worker or you're somebody who maybe is in school for peer support, we have started a peer support specialist support group. I know that's very wordy, but I hope you can join us for that. That's on Zoom the first and third Wednesday of every month. Just a kind of a safe place for peer support workers to come and talk about the work. Just talk about their own recovery and how that relates to the work they're doing in the peer support field. Virtual Narcan training, just a reminder, the third Thursday of every month at 12:30. Hope you can join us for that. It's kind of a good 101 for people who have maybe no experience with Narcan, but it's also a good brush up on trends that are happening in DuPage County. I'm going to skip this one and maybe hit it at the end. Next month, Friday, October 4th, we are having our nature therapy walk in conjunction with our partners at the Conservation Foundation. This is one that we've been doing for about the past year. It is just another of the multiple pathways to recovery. We look at nature as a way, kind of like a holistic healing process, and our friends at the Conservation Foundation have been awesome in setting these up with us. This one's on Friday, October 4th at Blackwell Forest Preserve in Warrenville. And all these things I usually send out via the email as well, so keep an eye out for that. This weekend, one of the most important events in Illinois recovery in a long time. Actually, this is the first time Illinois has ever hosted the National Recovery Rally. We will be there as DuPage ROSC, because I think a ton of people will be there at the UIC Credit Union Arena. There is still time to register. I've been sending this out, but if you see the QR code on there and you want to take a quick snap, you can sign up for that, which is happening on Saturday. Last thing before I turn it over to our very special guest, on September 30th, right next door to us in Carroll Stream, we are having a town hall, a solution to the opioid overdose crisis. A bunch of us are going to be there on a panel talking about what we see on the front lines as far as the overdose crisis and what are some solutions. So DuPage ROSC in conjunction with Live for Lolly, LTM Foundation, Illinois Harm Reduction and Recovery Coalition. Hope you can join us for that one. And with all the housekeeping out of the way, I'm going to stop my share And I am going to turn it over to our very special guest, Tom Farley, who is the Community Outreach Director at recovery.com. And that is a new title for him. You may have seen him previously at Rosecrans Foundation. And special thank you to Becky Sadler at Rosecrans for helping set this up for us. Tom Farley is also the co-founder of the Chris Farley Foundation, and the author of the Chris Farley Show, which, if you were on this Zoom before we started, I was saying this is definitely a full circle moment. Back in the mid to late 2000s, I was an executive producer at WGN Radio. When the Chris Farley Show book came out, I actually booked Tom when he was on his promotional tour. And so it's one of those small world things. It's like, a decade later, here I am in a field that I definitely did not expect to be in, and I'm glad to have him here in this capacity. Tom is from Madison, where recovery.com is based, and he is just a tireless advocate for those of us who have been living with substance use and mental health challenges. And he is, for Recovery Month, obviously wearing purple. I love to see that. Everybody's showing the purple off for Recovery Month. And enough rambling for me. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our special guest, Tom Farley, and hopefully we have some time for maybe questions and comments at the end. So Tom, do I need to make you a co-host or anything? How do you just want to take over?
Yeah, I need that kind of attention and control. No, I think we're good just like this.
Yep.
And I know Becky probably wanted to say something either before or after me. I don't know, Becky, you want to go first or?
No, we're good. You take it away.
Okay.
I know this group well, so they know all about Rosecrans, and yeah, we're just thrilled to support Tom in his new role at recovery.com. So
I was excited, when I worked with Becky to be invited into this. And I still am, now that makes, I can really help support everything you do and continue to support, Rosecrans, which I, feel very connected to. So this is wonderful. Happy Recovery Month. Good to be here. And yeah, I'll just jump right in. I just, this Recovery Month, this is like my playoffs. I mean, I've been going from one place to the other, just sharing my story, which is, I feel very grateful and privileged to be able to do that because it's been a journey. I talk about, just my family growing up, having a sibling that with a an addiction that had with very public overdose to my own journey in recovery. It all, I mean, I really kind of hit this from every angle. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I don't know, works for me. So the way I like to say, I'm up here in Madison, Wisconsin, not far away, and where we grew up. And I like to say that we in my family we check three boxes. We had from what I understand, certainly over the years, a pretty long family history of alcoholism that went back several generations. We were Irish, and we lived in Wisconsin. So, checking just one of those boxes would have been enough for us to really have some things to think about. But we checked all three. And the interesting thing about that is in all three of those, we thought drinking was, you know, normative. It's what you did. It was part of our identity. If you were a Farley, you drank. If you're Irish, you're supposed to drink, right? And of course, if you live in Wisconsin, I think you're close enough to us to know that that story. We have a bit of a culture up here, so we checked all three of those boxes, and it was very normative behavior. And in fact, when I went away to college in Washington, D.C., I thought that was normative too, because I lived in this Big Ten college town of Madison, Wisconsin. And I saw how, at least visually, like what I thought most of the college kids, behaved. And so I got out east and kind of exported that. And I'm sure I probably stuck out. But I didn't know it. And then I moved up to New York, started my career in marketing and communications. followed shortly thereafter by my brother Chris, who came to New York. I don't know what he was doing. I know I had a job and I was working hard, but he looked like he had a lot of fun. But it was my first real experience with what we know. It's a term that we use pretty. We know it intimately now. This term of being a first responder. Um, we didn't know what that meant back then, and I just the rest of my family was in Wisconsin, and here was Chris and I. And I was the older brother. I felt like I had to, I saw Chris struggling and I thought, well, I'm the only one here. I got to solve this. And that was my first kind of taste of like, you know, how do you deal with this? And as I said, I thought I had to solve it. And what we know now about being a first responder is you don't. The big help's coming and it's all around us. But you just have to connect. You just have to, just talk and listen and see what's going on. And I probably could have done that a lot better, but um, you know, it was interesting. I started to see Chris really, he really kind of showcased kind of all the things that we had in our family that, on the addiction and mental health side. And the thing is, you know, when you have somebody like that in your family, as we did, it was easy for us to point to Chris, and we did, and say, well, we're not that bad, so I guess we're okay. Um, we weren't, just so you know. But it was easy for us to kind of always say that, and not only that, but we really couldn't help them as much as we probably could have or wanted to, because there was a lot of fear in being honest about, you know, what we were doing and our own issues. And so we just didn't want to go there. And so we just made it Chris' problem. And he went kind of in and out of um, treatment and finding help, but kind of always for the wrong reasons. He was going in because, like me, like all of us in our family, we were people pleasers. So when somebody says, "Chris, you got a problem," he would comply and do what they wanted him to do and go to treatment, just to please people. Um, and or he was in fear of losing this amazing job that he worked so hard to get, this dream job, and so he would go in so he wouldn't lose his job. All these things just to come back into his environment in New York and start the cycle all over again. And that was certainly a roller coaster, and hard for us as a family. I'm sure it was really hard for Chris. Um, But one of the fortunate things I got to see was, I think his third year in SNL, second year, he came back from Hazleton in Minnesota for the second time, and he did something different. Instead of going to his big apartment on the Upper West Side of New York, he went to a sober living facility that Hazleton had in Lower East Side. And here he was on TV every Saturday night, but working his recovery program every night, checking, making his bed every morning, just doing what he had to do to be in recovery. And I didn't know what that, what I saw for me, my kind of barometer was different. I just saw like, well, he's dressing better. So I didn't know that there was a connection between the two, but also at the same time that everyone saw his career just went through the roof. He just got so amazing on this in his craft, because drugs and alcohol weren't robbing him of this talent. Again, I didn't see that at first. I didn't know what that was. I just thought he was just really getting better at what he did, but it really was Chris in recovery when we saw when he was at his best. And then I got a call just at the end of his tenure at SNL. I got a call and he said, "Tommy, it's my third year of sobriety. I'm going to kind of chair a meeting. Can you, come to a meeting, can be there with me?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. Like, what meeting? What are you talking about? Like, and little did I know this is where he would go, like, if not every day, pretty close, multiple times during the week, to be, work his recovery program. And so I went to the address that he gave me, and it was I found myself walking, deeper into the west side of New York, and realizing that suddenly I was in the middle of a neighborhood called Hell's Kitchen. And I'm like, my first thought was like, he totally gave me the wrong address. Like he totally, just pulled a prank on me, which is something he'd do. But I found the address and it was this old, just looked like a old bombed up building. And I went upstairs into this room full of people that looked like they dragged everyone off the streets in the neighborhood. But there was Chris in the front of the room in his little blue blazer, and he's telling everyone with all the sincerity and humility I've ever seen him display. He said, I'm no different from anyone in this room. And I'm in the back of the room going, come on, man, you're a little different. Like with this, what do you have in common with this crowd? What are you talking? I had no idea. And he said, with all the sincerity and humility and honesty. He said, "No, I woke up this morning. I just wanted to be sober, like everyone here, and here we are at the end of the day. We did it, through a lot of work and prayer and you know here we are, and we get cake and coffee, as a reward. How great is that?" And I'm like, "Who is this guy?" Um, I've never seen Chris like that. And so it was wonderful to see Chris in recovery, though I didn't know what I was looking at. Unfortunately, then he moved to LA and kind of lost that connection, to be honest. Um, and I remember I was sitting in a friend's office in Fairfield, Connecticut, where I lived. And this is a friend from college that had some experience in the entertainment industry, and we were trying to come up with ideas of like some fun project or charity event that we could bring Chris and some of his buddies in to do. And um, we're talking that over. And next to him on his desk, he always had a TV. It was always CNN playing. Um, while we were meeting, it was muted though. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw on the TV, I saw Chris and David. It was some clip from Tommy Boy. And my first thought was, oh, I hadn't seen him in a month. Like, what's he up to? And at that point, I was pretty used to seeing my brother on TV, so I didn't think anything about that. So I turned the volume up, and just when I did, the screen went to his apartment in Chicago, the John Hancock building, and with an ambulance out front, and the anchor is saying, "We just heard that Chris Farley has died of a drug overdose." So that's how I heard that my brother had died of this disease. And many things went through my head at that time. My first thought was, how do I process this? I felt like who goes through this? I'm so unique. I had Access Hollywood pounding on my door that night, looking for a statement, and I'm like, this is turn my world upside down. But I'm like, nobody goes through this. Well, I quickly found out that that is absolutely not true. I actually have found out in the 26 years since Chris died that I actually share this loss and this grief with a lot of people, and that number has just grown every year. And the drug that killed Chris, and we talked about this when he was alive. He said, "Tommy, I can be in recovery. I can give up drinking. I can give up weed." Because I'm working my recovery program. And he goes, "And you know how I love those two things." And he did, he did. But he said, "Heroin is just a different animal. Like it's the devil." He told me. He said, "It's always there. I don't know how, I don't know how to fight that, but I know I have to." So I thought at the time, like, how could we ever come up with a drug that's worse than that? And here we are again, 27 years later. Yeah, there is one out there now that's killing, on contact. Um, yeah, it's been a journey. I was lucky that one of the first things I learned about myself when this event happened, and I don't know why, but I'm very grateful that it did, is I said to myself, I've got to talk about this. I can't keep this inside, which is a very Irish, very Wisconsin thing to do, to bury that emotion. But it was just so, so big and large. And I just knew there's no way I could keep it down. So I went out into schools and I started to talk really more on a prevention kind of theme, and I really wanted to connect with my audiences, this young audience. I knew I had a great, with Chris's name, I had a great brand, but I'm like, how do I connect? And the problem, one of the problems I had, and particularly using Chris's name, is um, pretty much the only language that we know in my family is humor. So I'm like, that's all I know how to talk to people. And how do I use humor in this like really kind of very serious subject matter? And so I looked at my Chris, all my brothers, and now my son, who all went through Second City and learned this thing called improv, which was they used to make people laugh. And I'm the smart one in the family, so I studied it. Uh, um, and I learned that it was actually created by a woman, um, Viola Spolin, that was dealing with at-risk inner city kids down on the south side, the old Cabrini Green area. And she developed these games and exercises to kind of draw people in, help them communicate, help them create ensembles and connection. And I'm like, wow, that's exactly what we need. I mean, I would go into schools and I'd see all these great prevention programs that are, because they're done in schools, they're very information based or knowledge based and being delivered by professional teachers that had that skill set. Well, one, I didn't have that skill set, and two, I didn't, they didn't need more information. They needed a tool to use that information. And I just saw like, you know, improv is that tool. So I just started going in teaching improv with the goal of really getting people to understand what connection really feels like and should be like, and creating an ensemble. And it was wonderful. Um, just creating what I call peer enhanced environments as opposed to peer pressured environments. And then I moved back to Madison, Wisconsin, to get my kids back into the solid, Midwest value system, which worked. Uh, but I was asked. Somebody said, "Oh, well, if you're back in Madison, you should meet this woman, Shelley, who has a clinic that works with at that point teen IOPs." And uh, I said, sure. And so I asked Shelly, I was like, what are you doing in recovery, like, with teens? And she said, well, a lot of them have come out of treatment, but, now they're trying to, kind of live this life in recovery. So we're helping with that. And a lot of things we do in our IOPs is teach, how to build trust and build acceptance. And I said, well, that's exactly what improv is designed to do, trust and acceptance. I go, she goes, well, let's try it with teens. And it was amazing. And so I started doing it, and little by little, I went from a prevention kind of focus to a recovery focused. And I don't know, I just found, you know, that I could really, kind of make a difference there. But here's where my story changes. During all that time, um, as I've done just now so far in just talking to you, um, I have been talking about Chris. I've been talking about somebody else's addiction. And I thought I was doing, helping people, and I was. And during that time, there were times in my life where I'm like, you know what, I probably shouldn't drink either. Um, and so I would stop, and I had enough distractions in my life. I had three kids, jobs and all that kind of stuff, and I could maintain a good run at sobriety. I had a couple times in my life for like 4 or 5 years, and during that time I would go to meetings, and because I thought it was all about drinking, it was easy for me to look across the room and listen to somebody share and say, well, that person drinks more than me. I don't, that person over there takes drugs and they drink. I'm like, I don't belong here. Just like it was in my family. I was, like how we used to point to Chris and say, we're not that bad. That's what I was doing. And so I would have these, this roller coaster of sobriety followed by not sobriety. My mind would say, you know, it's St. Patrick's Day. You can have one Guinness. You've been sober for 4 or 5 years. You've got this. And I would have that one beer. And next thing I know, I'm right back where I was before. I could never understand that. And so about 6 years ago, I just got tired of it. I got tired of all the train wrecks I was creating. And I also had a summer where you know, I was smart enough to know that what I was doing wasn't really very smart. I was going out socially. I'm a pretty social person, and I would go out and I would look at my watch and I said, "All right, it's 9:30. If I leave right now, I can get home," which is it's already too late by that time. But then to get home, I have to plot my way home to avoid all sorts of detection. And then when I got home at 9:30, I was like, well, it's only 9:30. So then, the cupboard got opened and there I was, by myself at home, waking up the next day just as continue, it was beating me up. And I was smart enough to know that this is crazy. So I did the only thing I knew to do at that time. I just stopped. And it was just about that time that my friend Shelly, who had this clinic in Madison, I hadn't talked to her in a while, and she called me up and she said, "How are you doing?" And I kind of proudly tell her, like, "I'll tell you, I haven't had a drink in 4 months," expecting a lot more applause than I got. She said, "That's great. We should have coffee." And I said, I would love that." Just the whole, thought of connection when I would just had been living a life of total isolation. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Let's have coffee. And she said, great. Well, meet me Saturday morning, 9 o'clock in the basement of the Presbyterian church. I'm like, oh, damn it. I knew this was going. And, but, it was that one person that she accepted me, always has, and I trusted her. She had helped so many people in in our community up here in Madison. I like, how do I say no to this person? So it was my first real experience of surrendering, of giving up. I'm saying, okay, I'll go. And a couple of things, I remember the first couple of meetings. I remember in my head going, really, the rest of my life with this, crew, that sounds horrible. Because my mind always project way out ahead of me. I know what this is going to look like. And lucky for me, I started to listen. I did. I showed up and I just shut up and I listened. And I started not to hear how much people drank or took, substances. I started to hear like, oh wow, I've had I've had strained or broken relationships like that person's talking about. I've had job loss like that person over there. And I started to see a connection of a life that I was trying to avoid. And I quickly kind of said to myself, you know, God, the rest of my life with this group, I hope so, because I'm feeling like I've never a connection that I've never felt before. Even though these people have nothing in common with me, apparently, that I could tell, except for this one thing. And we were talking about it, and that was fantastic. And so, yeah, and it was the first time I heard. I remember the little things. The first time I heard the words rigorous honesty, and I'm like, that's a thing? Like I can live my life that way? I mean, because I'm Irish and I was also a marketing professional. So I knew how to kind of, tell a story, craft curate a life, as I like to call it, like a champ, and definitely not honest. And so I clung to that. Clung to that and the feeling that connection was giving me. So um, I um, I haven't looked back. It's been phenomenal. And now again, as I said, I started out talking about somebody else's addiction. Now I'm talking about mine. And what's interesting is um, people are coming up to me, and I'm coming back into my life, and they're saying, "Oh, I want to hear your story." I'm like, Really? Mine?" Like, but there's Chris, and people are like, "I mean, that's interesting, but um, no, you're here. We're in recovery together. I want to hear your story." And that was amazing, because what I didn't know was all these years, and again, I love connection, I love people, but I was pushing people away. And now here I am being honest, and I'm attracting people and bringing back people in. What I was doing was I was putting out a person that I thought the world wanted me to be through my expectations of myself and my family. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I have to be this person that I thought everyone wanted to see. And so, in order for me to be that person, I needed everyone else in my life to do certain things so I could be that person. I needed my kids and my family to act a certain way, so I could be that person and fulfill these expectations. I needed my employers to give me that job, not the one I have, that job. You don't understand. I need to be that person, so I need that job. And you know, I those relationships that I tried to control, I ended up pushing away. Um, family, employers, things like that. It just was, I couldn't understand it. Um, what I realized was the reason for that was the person I was putting out there wasn't a real person. It wasn't me. It was somebody I thought I had to be. And so um, when I started to learn in recovery these concepts of honesty and gratitude and humility, um, and apply those to myself, for the first time, really, because the person I was putting out to the world, because that person wasn't real, how could that person ever be honest? How could that person ever be grateful or humble? There's no way, because that wasn't a real person. So being able to feel those feelings and display those emotions, and connecting them to who I was, my authentic self, had a dramatic effect. It was amazing, and some of the um, relationships that I thought were gone forever, that I had damaged, started to come back. I thought in recovery I had to be this whole new person. I'm a new person, yeah, but I'm not. I'm just finding, that authentic person for the first time, but it's still me. And luckily, there have been people in my life that have always saw that, even when I didn't. And those are the people I really cherish. But yeah, so a couple of things that I kind of learned along the way um, was it was some interesting things. So the first kind of, moment was the summer of 2020. Um, and uh, it was kind of a tough, summer. And two things happened. Well, the first thing was, at that time, I was working for United Way in Dane County in Madison. Loving what I was doing, but it was COVID, so it was still kind of virtual. But I loved what I was doing. I love my doing community nonprofit work. So our CEO came up and said, we sponsor a summit, an event that we can all go to if you want. It's a 3-day thing, but by all means go. It was called the YWCA put it on here in Madison, and it was called the Racial Justice Summit. And as I said, we had been going through a pretty rough summer. I'm like, you know what? I'd like to go to that and learn something. So I went, and it was very valuable. But what was really interesting was um, the first day, the last speaker uh, said to everyone on this Zoom call, I'm going to send you home with some homework. I want you to go home and I want you to identify where in your life do you experience or feel deep belonging. And I know where he was coming from. He wanted us to, there are people in our communities that have never get to feel that. And he wanted us to get in touch with that. And I said, okay, so I went home. I'm like, where do I have deep belonging? Well, I started the, natural first place was my family. Um, no, I mean, we love each other, but no, we all kind of, no, not deep belonging, no. Um, we just didn't have that. Um, was it my work at United Way? I mean, I love this work. I love everything I do. And I loved my team. But it really was, we were connected through our work. I really didn't know who they were, or and they didn't know who I was. So that wasn't it. And I'm like, is it my religion? My faith? No, I'm Catholic. We have our issues. We're working on it, but it wasn't that. Um, uh, the only thing I could come up with was my recovery community. Deep belonging. Yeah, I speak all over the country, and I always find a meeting, and I walk in, or I get finding online, and I'm like, yeah, completely different people leading different lives, but I'm connected. This is what it reminds me what it's supposed to feel like to be connected. And so that was wonderful to come up to be kind of pushed to do that work to really understand how valuable my recovery community is. And because I'm a social person, I'm always out there. Um, when I get the first kind of feeling of I'm being that false person again, I'm making people laugh because I feel that they think I'm supposed to be funny, or I'm being somebody I'm not. I'm really into, I'm very into, I feel that. And I know what I got to do. I got to reconnect to my recovery community. I got to call somebody. I got to go to a meeting. I got to read something. I got to do some meditation. I got to do whatever it is, because now I know that's the last place I want to be. I go back to, rigorous honesty and my authentic self. So that was a great kind of thing to do, go through. The other thing that happened that summer was my oldest daughter, who lives in New York. There was a break in COVID, and everyone was like, it's over. It wasn't over, but restaurants started to open up. And so my daughter from New York said, I want to come back to Madison, visit, and see everyone now that we can travel. I've been cooped up in my Brooklyn apartment. So I said, yeah, come on home. And this is my oldest daughter, my firstborn. It's a relationship that means so much to me. Um, but she was also the oldest when kind of the family started to disintegrate. And, when she got through high school, she was like, I'm out of here. And she kind of went out first to Chicago, then to New York. and she got away. So I really, it means a lot. I knew I had to do some repair there. So I was ecstatic that she was coming home. So we went home. We went to this restaurant in Madison, and a guy met us at the front door and he said, "Well, we're selling COVID protocols, so we don't have menus. You order on your phone, and then we don't have wait staff, but somebody will come out with your food from the kitchen." And I'm like, I got a question. Hang on, I got all kind of boomer-ish on the guy. I said, explain this to me. If I'm on my phone ordering my lunch and my daughter's on her phone ordering her lunch, but I want to pay for both, how does that happen? And he's like, well, if you really need a paper menu, and I'm like, I got really frustrated. I said, I didn't say that. It was a technology question. And I got, just visually kind of, impatient and frustrated. But I caught myself and I said, you know what? We'll figure it out. Never mind. You know what? I brought a millennial. She'll figure it out. Thank you. And I'm sorry. Go ahead. And I turned to my daughter. I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you too. I want to be present. Um, but if you could kind of figure out how to order our lunch so we could eat, that'd be great. Um, I was just controlling what I can control, which is me. And trying to have the serenity of giving up everything else. And so just working my recovery program, with not trying to manipulate anything else. So but my daughter paused and she looked at me. She goes, Dad, when we were growing up, little things happened like that all the time. And you would just carry it the rest of the day. And we just knew to stay away from you the rest of the day because you couldn't let it go whenever we all paid for it. And I'm like, that's totally not true. It was totally true. And so when you went in, with this waiter, that old feeling came back. I'm like, oh my God, here he goes again. But then you caught yourself. You stopped. I'd never seen you do that. It kind of shocked me. And then you did something you never did, is you apologized to him, and then you turned to me and apologized to me. And I'm like, wow, like you saw it. It wasn't my intention for anyone to see it. That's what I needed to do. And what I realized later on was what I was experiencing was a relationship healing that through not me, not on my terms or on my timeline. It was just, or how wasn't like all of a sudden better. It was getting better, and I could see it, and I can, it was I continued to work on it, but it was amazing. I was like, wow, I can do that. I can repair relationships just by just not, being a threat to people, and just being my own kind of, self. So that was really neat. That was incredible. And so, um, uh, yeah, that was interesting. Learning those relationship things, just trying to be your best self in recovery. I was asked when I was doing the Rosecrans podcast at WGN, um, being interviewed by John Williams. He asked me a question to explain what's the difference between recovery and long-term recovery. I think at that point I was maybe 2 years into recovery, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just in recovery, but if I have to answer that question, I'll answer it this way. Um, when I 10, 12 years ago, when I got divorced, and people ask me, why did you get divorced? My answer was, I got divorced because my wife didn't respect me, didn't support me, very self-centered, blah, blah, blah. I had a whole story. Um, I had it all down, bullet pointed. Um, and then I got into recovery. And when somebody asked me that same question, why did you get divorced? My answer changed. It became, well, if I'm honest, I wasn't very supportive and respectful either. And I thought that was a pretty good answer. I thought I'm taking responsibility for me. Um, But then I got a little farther along now. And if somebody were to ask me that question today, my answer would be, why did I get divorced? Because I wasn't respectful and supportive of my family, period. Their role had nothing to do with, I can't control that. I can control what I can control. And because I believe that and I live that, those relationships um, are coming back, are healing. As I mentioned with my daughter, um, and with her mom, we're back to friends like we were in college. Now, is it the relationship I wanted or tried so hard to kind of create and grow? No, but it's what I have. And I've learned to be grateful for that, because the alternative is, I mean, we love the same three people on the earth more than anyone else in the world. Why would I not want this person in my life? So, and that's just one person. I treat everyone like that now, and that's my answer. That's what recovery is to me. I get to just, you know, show the world this person who I, didn't really think I was, but through how I'm feeling, how recovery is allowing me to connect with, um, people are coming back into my life. It's amazing. So, um, it's great. I'm coming out of isolation, and what I like to say a lot is, we've been talking about these diseases of substance use and mental illness as disease of isolation for years. We know that. Everyone knows that. They're isolation. But what we don't talk about is the flip side of that, which is, you don't heal in isolation. It demands connection. We can go through all the therapies in the world and know why we're feeling this way, understand our traumas, and that's critical. But the healing part comes in connection. You know, that's why, one of the most beautiful things, I'll a little plug into my former employer. We have this great, treatment facility down in Rockford, but we also have this Japanese garden connected to it. This just healing place that is incredible. So, yeah, I guess the last thing I will end with, because I know we're running out of time, is two things that I'm truly, I love, and I try to support as much as I can, and I know and you're part of it. Two things in this field, if you will, the two growth areas in this. Before treatment, if somebody went away to treatment, they went away to treatment. And what I love about the two things that are really up, just up and coming, are peer support and sober living. Those two things. And why I love those two things is because those are done in our communities. Those are done, and the rest of the community gets to see people heal. Whereas before, they just went away, and you come back and hopefully you're better. But now with these two things, the rest of the community gets to see people heal and see what it's like, to have somebody in recovery doing amazing things in our community. And that's the clearest way to breaking down stigmas as I can see it. It needs all of us. And so I appreciate everyone's role in that. It was a wonderful, group to be talking about that. So I guess if you want to ask questions, I could go on forever. Give me another hour and we would really have fun.
Tom, thank you so much for a great talk. I do want to open it up for a few questions. We got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So if anybody here wants to raise your little digital hand, we can get some questions in the mix. While we're doing that, I had a question, Tom. Obviously, your brother entertained millions of people through humor. You talked about involvement in Second City and other things. I was curious, your take on maybe how humor can be a positive thing, maybe for someone who's in recovery, but maybe how it could also be detrimental to some people in
Oh,
recovery. What are your
that's a
thoughts
great
on that?
question. And I talk about that. I do talks on that. It's funny. One of the first things I was asked to do at Rosecrans was to speak at our alumni retreat. Every year we do a retreat for all the people that come through. And uh, listening to people's story, I was going to, be the last speaker, but I was listening to all these people. One of the clinicians that came out to talk about this stuff was talking about trauma. And I'm like, well, I know it. Trauma is something bad, and like your life's going wrong and trauma, and now you're like going off and she's like, no, that's, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the big kind of, but trauma. But, we as humans become collectors of trauma. We're always, and we mash it down. And she was just explaining what this whole concept of trauma and dealing with it. And it's percolating in my mind. And like 45 minutes later, it comes my turn to talk. And I'm like, time out, I got to talk about this. I've been thinking about it for like a half hour. I said, do you know what trauma was like in the Farley family? And everyone was like, oh, here it comes. I'm like, no, the trauma was that we had one emotion we used for everything. And obviously, you can imagine what that one emotion was, humor. If somebody was stressed out in my family, we laughed. If somebody was, fell and hurt themselves in my family, we laughed. Not to be mean, we just didn't like their pain. And, so we thought our humor could bring them out of that. If somebody was angry, we laughed. We still do, actually. If somebody was experiencing joy, we laughed. We couldn't even go to the positive end. Our coping mechanism was laughter because we didn't want to just go into those other emotional areas. And it became a trauma for us. And so humor can have that effect. I didn't know what, gratitude and humility and grace, all those things I learned in recovery, to be perfectly honest, because for me, it was all about managing my emotions through an over reliance on humor. And then, when we still felt kind of bad, it was, then we drank, but obviously, but yeah, but humor is very connecting, very, very healing, but it has a dark side too. You need the other emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has a question, again, you can jump on for Tom here in the last few minutes we have. I just wanted to make another comment real quick. I think, one of my blind spots with your story and your family's story was I think most people, were aware of your brother's struggles, but I personally didn't know that he had put together that much sobriety time previous to that and was doing things like that in the recovery community. And so that was awesome to hear, but also kind of sad because I think that the other stuff kind of overshadows obviously
Yeah.
the work he was putting into himself to stay sober, especially in a very stressful, situation, being on stage, being in the spotlight, and still managing
Yeah.
to maintain that.
Well, what's sad for me is now being in recovery now. I would have loved to have been in recovery with Chris because we would have really. And to be honest, I feel like he's with me now anyway. I mean, I'm continuing his work, but it would have been really special for us to, because we probably shared some of the same traumas. Mom. No, I'm kidding. It was dad. But that would have been nice. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, hi. Um, I just want to say, Tom, thank you so much. That was really inspiring to listen to you share. As someone myself who identifies with recovery, I got sober on April 7th of 2018. And a lot of the work I've done since has been about just maintaining, building community. And I took classes at Second City when I first moved to the city in 2005. And a lot of their instructors used to share stories about Chris, like Tim O'Malley and others.
Jimmy.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a cool experience before I got sober to be in Second City, just to hear everyone share his legacy. But then after I got sober, one of the surprising things was meeting so many people in the Chicago area, especially performers who are sober as well, and
Yeah.
talk about also that unique bond of community outside of performing, just within the recovery circles. So I really appreciate you just being vulnerable and sharing your own personal story too. Congratulations on your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I really lean hard into the um, improv concept of ensemble for connection. everyone's playing a different instrument, but making beautiful music. And I love that ensemble thing that came out of, Second City.
Connie, you got a question?
Hi. Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Tom. I've heard you. You spoke at Your Light Still Shines in New Lenox a few years back, and I heard you there. I liked the talk about connection. The opposite of addiction is connection. We all heard that, and we know that, and it's important. I love that you work a program. I do too, and I love when you talk about your brother. When you have a family member that's in addiction. I have my oldest brother is a doctor and is in recovery. But his recovery was different than mine. But to relate to that and to understand that and where it came from, you don't know you have all these little defects until you start looking at yourself. And when you talked about relationships and how you act, COVID was difficult for me too in 2020, and my attitude and isolation. At that a Jewel manager one day in April and that summer, and I actually spotted her a few weeks later, and I apologized because I knew it was wrong, and she looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, please bear with me. I just want to make this amends to you because I was really shitty. Sorry, I was really shitty to you. And she says no one's ever done that before. So I think it's more than just, like you talked about, more than just stopping your using or drinking.
Yeah.
It really gets an inner look at yourself. So I appreciate you bringing all that up, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have a question or comment for Tom before we wrap up? Going once, going twice. Well, Tom, thank you again. Congratulations on your new role, and we really appreciate you making the time for us. I just want to echo something you said as we kind of file out here. Those of us who are in recovery or people with lived experience, let's just continue to talk, and let's continue to be out there and be vulnerable, because that is one of the main things we can do to fight the stigma, but maybe also to show people who are still struggling that this type of life is possible. So Tom, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And hope to see you soon.
Well, I thank you for all you do. As I said, I love this place where I am at now, this web resource, because it breaks down fear, which is a huge barrier to recovery. And that's what I think your whole network, when you come together, if the community, knows anything, it's like not to fear, and so I appreciate you all for your role in just, telling the community that, as I like to say, recovery exists on the other side of fear. So anything we can do to break that wall down is wonderful, and appreciate you all for everything you do. Thank you.
Very well put. So thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you at the next one. Everyone have a great day.
See ya.